Hey, T&B Youth Group. I miss you guys, and I hope you are doing well. I really enjoy getting to see many of your faces and get to interact with you on our Zoom call this past Sunday night. I had a lot of fun just playing games and getting to talk with you guys. So I'd encourage you, we're going to do it again this Sunday night. So I encourage you to join us. I'll be sending out a link through our Remind and our GroupMe. If for some reason you aren't receiving those, give me a text and I'll make sure that you get that link and you get added to those so that you can be a part of our Zoom meeting. If you didn't get to do it last time, please join us. I thought it was a lot of fun, and it's good to get to see one another. And also, if you have any friends that you want to invite, I think during this time where we're all kind of isolated, I think we're seeking connection with other people, and Zoom was a great way to kind of experience some of that community. So you may have some friends that may want that connection as well, so invite them to be a part of our Zoom meeting this Sunday night at 7:30. They can enjoy playing games with us and having discussion time and prayer time together as well. And also, I'm going to be continuing to put just short devotional messages out on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, just like this one. So I hope that you are enjoying these and that they are encouraging to you and that they just help you better focus your attention on Jesus. Well, each Sunday, I get a report from my phone that's a little scary. It tells me just how much time I've been spending on my screen every day and how much greater of a percentage or less of a percentage it is from the previous week. And if you're like me, your screen time report has probably gone up over the past couple weeks. You've maybe spent a little bit more time on it since we've had more time at home. That report's a little scary to me because it's pretty much telling me how much time of my life I'm wasting or how much meaningless time I'm spending on my phone. And not that everything I do on my phone is meaningless, but a lot of it is meaningless. It's a lot of reading of what new free agent the Cowboys have signed, or scrolling through Facebook, or binge watching a show on Netflix. And it's a little sad to see just how much of my time I'm spending doing something that really doesn't matter. But that screen time report is also a helpful reminder for me to evaluate my time, to actually think about how I'm choosing to spend the time that I have. Probably for many of you, you find yourself with some extra time on your hands. I know some of you are still working and you've probably started online learning with your school, but you probably have some extra free time that you didn't have before. So I wanted to focus tonight on just how we spend our time and what the Bible says about how we use our time. So how we spend our time matters because how we spend our time is ultimately how we spend our lives. That our time makes up our lives. And so probably all of us want to live a life that matters. We want to live a life that is meaningful. So if you want to have a meaningful life, we must spend our time in a way that is meaningful. Well, Paul talks about our time in his letter that he wrote to the Ephesians. And Paul had a really close relationship with the church in Ephesus. He spent more time at that church than any other church on his missionary journeys. And because he cared about them so much, he wanted to make sure that they were living their lives well. So I'm going to read from Ephesians 5, verses 15 through 17. In this section, Paul is encouraging the Ephesian Christians to live as children of the light, to live as people who are seeking after Jesus, rather than living in the darkness of this world. So let's read starting at verse 15. I'm going to read through verse 17. Ephesians chapter 5. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. So Paul encourages them to be careful how they live, to be careful how they spend their time. I think sometimes it's really easy to be careless with our time. I don't know if that's something you think about a lot of how you are spending your time. But often we can make decisions that's kind of selfish with our time, that we make decisions based on our own enjoyment or our own pleasure, or we can spend our time seeking after things that really aren't the most meaningful things, that are things of this world rather than the things of God. So Paul encourages us to live wisely, to be wise in the way that we choose to spend our time. And one of the reasons that he tells us to be careful how we live is he says the days are evil. So what does Paul mean when he says the days are evil? Is it like, oh, Mondays, they're the worst, they're evil? No, I don't think that's what he means. I think Paul is saying we need to be careful how we live because there is evil in this world. That if we aren't careful, we can be easily enticed by the things of this world and led away from the life that God has planned for us. When we're not careful how we live, we can experience the hurt and destruction that comes along with that evil in this world. And I love the phrase in this passage, making the most of every opportunity. God has a good plan for your life. He wants to use you to help bring about his kingdom in this world, to spread his love and grace, and to help others to come to know Jesus. And if we aren't careful with our time, we can miss out on that good that God has in store for us. That there is people he has placed in your life that he wants to use you to have an impact on, to demonstrate his love to them. And when we are intentional and purposeful with how we spend our life, we get to live out that plan that God has for us. And that's what Paul says in verse 17. He says, therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. We want to live our life in a way where we are seeking God's will, because a meaningful life is one spent doing the will of the Father. Well, there's a video I've shown the youth group before where Francis Chan is speaking, and he has this rope that he uses as an illustration. And there's part of the rope that is painted, I think, red, that's about that long. And he says, this represents your life here on earth. And then there's the rest of the rope that's incredibly long, and it's piled up kind of a heap at his feet, just several coils of rope. And he says that the rest of the rope represents eternity, everything after this life. And he talked about how so often we get so focused on this part, on this finite period of time that is our lives here on earth. And we make decisions during this time and choices during this time that are all about maximizing this time and our enjoyment and our comfort for this life. But he says, rather, we need to be making choices and decisions, and we need to be spending our time in a way that we are focused on eternity, that we are living in light of eternity, that we're trying to make choices that have an eternal impact, that are preparing us for life after this life, for life that we get to spend with God. Jesus puts it this way in his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. It says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I encourage you to spend this extra time that you have storing up treasures in heaven. That we want to live in a way where you are seeking God and looking to do his will in your life. So here's one way that you can be more intentional about how you use your time. I want to encourage you to do some holy math. I want you to think about what is one thing that you're doing that maybe isn't so meaningful that you could subtract from your life, and what's one thing that you can add. So think of what's something that you're doing that maybe isn't the most meaningful way to spend your time, that you could subtract some from your life. So maybe that's trying to get that screen time down by an hour a day. Or maybe it's waking up an hour earlier rather than sleeping in really late. Or maybe it's one less hour of video game time each day. But what's something you could subtract from your time? And then what's something you can add? What's something that could help you better seek God, that could help you better do his will? So maybe it's spending time talking to God in prayer. You set aside time to do that. Or maybe it's more time that you spend reading his word. Maybe it's being more intentional or purposeful about spending time with your family or serving some way around your house. Maybe it's writing a letter of encouragement that you could send to someone in the youth group. Think of what's a way that you could spend your time to help you better seek God. So what's something you could subtract and what's something you can add? Well, this extra time can be a blessing. So I encourage you, don't waste it, but use it well. Use your time in a way that has an eternal impact. Well, I love you guys, and I look forward to seeing you on Zoom on Sunday night. But we'll see you later. Bye.